Hey, welcome back to my channel. I just want to show my current progress with the Ninja Gaiden remake design or redesign that I wanted to create just as a learning exercise on how I can escape the tutorials that I was doing. So yeah, I've got the player animation completed. I have the level 1 layout completed as well, along with the tiles that I wanted to create for the player to interact with. Um, got my attack animation as well. So let's get into how I went about doing so. So first, one of the constraints I set out for myself is that I won't be touching level design at all with this exercise. So in order to create the level to begin with, I've actually loaded in a reference of the Ninja Gaiden level 1-1 sprite map that I found. Using that, actually one interesting thing you can see already is that in the original Ninja Gaiden game, it's kind of cool because they actually have a kind of 3D like tiles set that they use. So it looks like there's actually, again, the background elements versus the foreground elements. And then for their sprite, it looks like they would offset it in a way where it looks like they're actually a part of that 3D scene. Unfortunately, I can't do that because I can't draw or edit. So I'm just using free tiles that I found. Hence why it's this ugly blob. But I've set up in a way where I shifted it so that I can actually line up things fairly closely to what I have. I'm using 16 by 16 pixels here. And yeah, I was able to at least achieve the same functionality or close to it by doing it this way. So this is how I'm going to be creating the levels. One of the harder challenges that I ran into was actually incorporating that wall cling mechanic. The reason is just because of the logic that I currently have for jumping wouldn't play nicely when it came to the actual wall cling itself. And there were ways to like break against it where if you decide to attack in midair, you can actually just keep infinitely climbing up higher and higher, which is not a function that I wanted folks to be able to do. This is when I actually switched to, had everything in the player script, but then decided to try out state machines and make that work for me. So had a chance to learn that, which is pretty great to have a finite state. So you could see I'm printing out the state here where I actually have a different set of states when it comes to the jump and the falling of the player when they're from cling so that I can control how the player is supposed to react to the animations that come after clinging. Now I can actually, even though a normal jump arc, you could see here, they can just jump at a speed of 100, but once they're jumping off from the wall from a cling state, then they get a reduced speed. So it prevents them from kind of exploiting the system to keep climbing up higher and higher. So I don't let them actually cling back on the wall. One of the other fun things is that I was trying to figure out in Ninja Gaiden, there are background scenes where a player can actually run through. But if they decide to jump to it, then they actually cling onto the wall. Kind of hacky way of doing it myself here, but you could see that I've actually using one-way tiles here where a player it only reacts to the player from one side of the collision. Otherwise, they can pass through normally. So here you can see what that looks like where, yeah, I can pass through here, but if I decide to jump towards the purple edge here, I'll actually cling onto the wall. Other features from Ninja Gaiden is that, or it looked like to me when you were jumping, your hurtbox would actually shrink. I'm required to do this anyways because the game has a crouch state, so you could see that I'm switching when the blue here is showing my actual hurtbox, and when I'm crouching, you can see that it's using the smaller hitbox. So the same thing occurs when you're jumping. What's great is that, oh shoot, looks like I have a bug here where the attack crouch state is not switching, so I'll have to fix that. State machines made this super easy to set up since I'll show you after, but there's a enter and exit state which I can easily make. So as I mentioned before, I decided to try out state machines for the first time for this project, and at least try it in a fashion where I actually use it, because I actually did tried in tutorials, but they were all under one script. Here I kind of broke things out and did it in a way where I found in other tutorials where you would have the player have different finite states that they could be in, and you switch between them. And when you do, then they would call on exit and enter functions on states, and then take in player input. I've actually created a player input component as well because I'm thinking I'll probably need to reuse this later when I use this state machine for my enemies. But either way, each state will handle that input and then run whatever functions it needs to run when you're in this state every tick. And as a result of that, depending on what they do, it might request a new state, and then we repeat that process. So let me show you what that looks like in code. So how I've set it up is, I guess my state manager scripts would actually be a part of my player script, where I will have a variable keep track of the current state, but those states actually are through a dictionary that I create called states, where the key is going to be one of these enumeration values from player states, and then the value itself is just going to point to one of these nodes that I've set up. I'll show you what that looks like after, and it'll make more sense. However, I was mentioning, yeah, so I'll have a player input component where we're just really capturing what button the player is pressing, and then from there we just call on the current state of that we're in and call on their handle input, along with just running whatever is in their update. Probably bad practice, but I also then, when it comes to changing state, like everything that the individual states need to call on, I've actually just put in the parent function, so they're really coupled. The individual states will all inherit this class with just these basic functions here, where there is an enter state function, exit state function, that handle input that I was mentioning that will actually will pass in the player input, and then just update where it's just running whatever logic we require every tick. Actually, these two are run every tick as well. So really, I probably could combine these, and it's probably what people do, but for myself, I just wanted to separate them for now so that I could see where I rely on player input versus. So to go into one of the states, for example, here's the idle state here, where when we enter the state, we are changing the animation and then run any additional logic that we require. So for idle, I just want to make sure that we actually are stopping the player and they're not moving anymore. And for handle input here, you could see that, for instance, if they're holding left or right, then make sure we enter the run state. If jump is pressed, then we're going to go into the jump state. Just an example of what else I am doing in the states. I'm actually also changing flags that I have on the player itself. Probably, again, not best practice, because we probably shouldn't have childs here changing flags and variables in the parent, but for now that's what I'm going with. Maybe in a refactor I'll change how this all works and have it signal up, but I'm just calling up for now. Gravity, I am adding in each of the individual states as well, and not on the player state, because I do want to change the way that the player may fall depending on the state that they're using. As I mentioned with cling, it was a little bit tricky, so being able to break up the cling, fall and jump, it was super useful, since I didn't want the player to be able to exploit and be able to jump back on the wall immediately. So I'm able to control when the player has access to pressing buttons again, basically. While we're on the jump state as well, I forgot to mention that also was able to implement the fact that when the player facing a certain direction decides to pull off a jump, then if they decide to move backwards, then it's just slow down their movement with like a slower like back pedal speed. I was able to do that here. You can see if I jump forward, it's normal, but as soon as I hold back, you'll see here he's like there's like friction against the actual change in direction. So I guess while we're at it as well, I could show how easy it is then to add this fix where, yeah, you can see here when I'm crouching here, my hurtbox is not changing when I'm attacking. So really that's just it's not activating an enter exit function that I created for changing the body shape. So let's go ahead and add that. So if I find my attack crouch state, it's probably missing it. Yep, missing it in its enter function, so I can add it. And then what's nice is when you change state, you run the exit state. So that's when I can then switch it back so that the next state will actually have the proper hurt box here. So let's change that as well. Make sure we change it back. And so if we bring up our game again and we attack, there you can see that it actually switching to use the crouch hurt box. So just to close it off, just going through my notes again and seeing if there's anything that I'm removing. But one thing I see immediately is that I said I'll be able to finish this in 2 weeks. That's too much hopium. I don't know what I'm smoking. Should be more like 4 weeks. I think I'm just gonna write that in here. More like 4 weeks. And yeah, other than that, I think I'll still keep everything else. We'll check in again and see how it goes. So thanks for watching, folks.